Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest issue of Comic Book Gentlemen, the podcast where we take the most divisive issues in the fandom and use our decades of being giant nerds to discuss them. I'm your host, Greg, joined by my constant co-host, Dave. Dave, how's it going?
I'm well.
I'm well. That's good to hear.
I'm well.
Yeah, that's not bad. So we are officially in the spooky season. This is going to come out in October, which is awesome.
Yes.
Are you a big horror spooky guy? Or
I like horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
Certain types.
Yeah, what's your favorite?
My favorite would probably, and most people would slide this into a sci-fi, is Aliens.
Oh, yeah. Aliens is really good.
More specifically, Alien, the first one.
Did you see the new Alien movie?
Yes, I did.
What'd you think?
I thought it was a good throwback to the way they did the first two, in the sense of, like, you didn't see the aliens a lot, you just saw them kind of crawling around in the background, and you kind of gave that spooky vibe, and I thought they fell back on that. The movie itself, I felt, was very condensed, in the sense that things were happening way too quick, that kind of, not the greatest execution.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So I'm actually a huge baby. Like, I remember as a kid, Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark terrified me. I couldn't do it. So I'm not a spooky person. But
it's okay. Scariest movie I remember watching as a kid, E.T.
Terrifying.
That
Cornfield
and the shed? No.
Yeah.
That did it for me.
But we still wanted to be a little bit spooky for you guys. So what we're going to talk about today is Marvel's Blood Hunt. Even though that happened during the summer and it was their big summer crossover event, it's still pretty spooky. It's blood. It's got vampires. It's got vampires. So it's a little bit spooky here. So today we're going to talk about Marvel's Blood Hunt, what we thought of it. Definitely going to be spoilers. So definitely spoiler warning if you haven't read it. We'll go into that, and then at the end of it, we're actually going to do a little bit of a discussion about like crossover events in general, like how we feel about it. We actually did do episode 19. Make sure to go back and check it out. Was our big Marvel crossover events tier list, where we did a bunch of tier list of all the major crossover events in Marvel history. So make sure to go check that out. But we're going to continue that discussion of, hey, what's the point of crossover events? Should they continue doing them, or should they, double think or something like that? So, to start us off, Dave, based on our tier list from episode 19, where would you rank Blood Hunt right off the bat?
I want to put it somewhere between good idea, poor execution.
Okay.
And it's okay.
Okay, so kind of like lower half.
Yeah, lower half.
Okay. I think I would probably put it upper half, so again, still in that middle, like not top echelon, but probably like a good read to bad idea, good execution. I definitely think it had pros and cons, and I guess you had pros and cons as well, but more cons than pros type of thing. So that's our general ideas about it. I'm very curious what you think. So let's get into talking about the event itself. Again, spoilers coming. Going into the event, were you like, in there, like reading all the Blade and stuff like that, or you kind of like had no idea what was going on? Let's hop in type of thing.
I mean, it was. I remember seeing the announcement. Blood Hunt. It's coming, and I was, like all events, I'm kind of like, oh, okay,
let's see what happens.
Curious what this is about. But as far as like reading Moon Knight or Blade or any of the elements that fed into it, barely.
Okay.
I wasn't paying attention to any of that stuff.
Interesting. So I definitely was reading Moon Knight and, Jed MacKay. So you kind of got a feel for, like, how he felt about vampires. And, kind of got that vibe. And definitely there was the whole... So what he did in Moon Knight, he did a lot of stuff for Moon Knight, which was really cool. But one of the big things, he really integrated... Khonshu versus vampires was a big point in that. So it's very interesting listening to that and then going to an event. One, Moon Knight was dead before the event, and then two, you knew like Khonshu had a history with vampires. So it's interesting on that. But I had no idea what was going on with Blade. I found out, he had a daughter apparently named Bloodline, which is interesting.
That was news to me.
And for some reason, Miles Morales was hanging out with Blade, and that's like the only thing I really need to go on the event. So, did you have like high expectations, or were you really just like, we'll see what happens?
Of course, I saw the one of my absolute pros for this series was the art.
Yes,
was
100%.
Pep Larraz is by far probably right now
the best artist.
My favorite artist, like that is actively working on a regular basis.
100%.
Yeah. I still love my Jim Lee, but Jim doesn't do things, although apparently he's announced he's doing a run on Batman now.
Oh, cool.
Pep, amazing.
One
amazing art.
Which reminds me, one day we should do our favorite artist podcast.
Yes.
The only issue is that's very much a visual medium. But,
Yeah.
We'll see how we can make it work. But Pepe Larraz, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Everything that guy touches, man, just amazing work.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So when I saw the art for it and
Yeah.
the concept from that perspective, I was like, oh, like of course I was immediately drawn to it because it's just great art.
Yeah.
So that was something I was excited about. I was excited to hear that he was coming back to the Marvel Universe. He was going to be drawing an entire series. I was hoping against hopes that he was actually going to finish the series and they weren't going to just like get him to do the first 3 issues and then somebody else stepped in and did the next issue or whatever it was, because they've done that before.
Yep.
So I was very happy to hear that he was doing the full run.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, I was excited. Like that I like the visual aspect. That's why I read comics. So I mean that was attractive enough, and that it was this going to be this large event that I didn't really see coming.
Yeah, it definitely felt like it was one of those events of like, we didn't plan this 3 years in advance. It's very much like more like, hey, what are we feeling right now? Who has an idea? Oh, Jed MacKay, you like vampires? Sweet, sounds like a great town type of thing. So let's get into like the first issue, or like the setup of the whole series.
Yeah.
So we have the suddenly all the Darkhold users explode.
Yeah.
And then it's suddenly dark, and everybody's like, what's going on? And then just vampires just come in and just go to town on everybody, the entire world. And then, I thought it was very cool because you had the potential aspect of, oh, who's going to get turned into a vampire? Who's going to get killed right away? All this stuff. I thought that aspect was really cool. And then you had the final page of that first issue being Blade turning Doctor Strange and killing Doctor Strange, and Blade being revealed as the actual bad guy, big baddie of the situation. So what was your initial thoughts beginning of the series?
Yeah, I thought like I like the Dark Force idea, because I'm guaranteeing you that there were some people reading that comic and they were seeing like some of these Dark Force users exploding and they were like, who the hell is that? Because I felt this was a series of who the hell is that? So that was cool, because I immediately again had some feelings about I know Cloak was pretty pretty important in Spectacular Spider-Man way back in the day, and like there were these characters that I was like, oh cool, like they're bringing these characters in that are just have been like MIA to some extent. They're bringing them in and something's happening with them. So immediately I was like, what the hell? What's going on? So that was great. I thought the setup for, the turn on of Blade was great as well, because not only does he screw over the Avengers, but then he kills or doesn't really kill Doctor Strange. So there was this big turn that was, you could kind of see it coming, but not really. Like you weren't. I wasn't entirely sure. So the initial fight, like the action between the Blood Coven and the Avengers, was just like great character great introduction of some new villains. The concept art for them was amazing.
Oh, Blood Coven was so cool.
They were awesome. They handed it to the Avengers so amazingly that it was just like, I was like, oh my god, like it was a very much I would say the first issue was very much a shock and awe issue.
100%. I 100% agree with you. Blood Coven, amazing. Please bring these guys back. They're fucking sweet. I also liked that you could tell that the bad guy had a plan, because he very much was like, okay, who are the big players? Thor, Scarlet Witch, a couple other people, and then Doctor Strange, right? Like he's like, okay, I have if I'm going to make this happen, 100%. If I have to take people out, these are the people I have to take care of, which is I thought was really cool. And then again, you had the whole like Black Panther gets turned into a vampire, Doctor Strange gets turned into a vampire. Like it was very much like who's going to get turned, type of thing, which is really cool. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the first issue, like from that perspective, I thought that like the action was great. The setup, like I liked the fact of the Dark Force. That was kind of interesting because that really hasn't been played on too much.
Yeah.
So that was cool. The turn was great. The introduction of some new villains was great. The art was great. I would say the only negative for me going into issue 1 was like I was like, who are these people and why is this happening? Right, because there was just like again, I think of like these when it's a wide spanning event like something like this. I was expecting to hear more rumblings about it throughout the rest of the Marvel Universe, where this was primarily set up in and not really very well in Moon Knight and Blade. Like it was the elements were there, but it just didn't, for me, it was just like, it was like I was just being introduced to comics.
Yeah, it was,
I was like, I don't know what's going on, but this looks fun.
You got dumped in the deep end pretty quick, eh?
Yeah.
So I know we've talked about this in the past, but for this one, did you read every tie-in issue, or what was your kind of go into?
No, because I went through and there was like, 60 issues?
There was a lot.
There was a lot of tie-ins, and what I've noticed with Marvel over the last little while is an event is an excuse to create tie-ins, and the tie-ins are like, I think more for like, I'm really into She-Hulk, and She-Hulk has a tie-in, so I'll read the tie-in. So that's, like to go and read every single one, they do two things, which is they make them not so important to the main storyline. It's just kind of like, hey, this is what's happening to this character during this mini event.
Yeah.
I also find that it's their testing ground for the most part, in my opinion, which is not a bad thing, for writers and artists, right? So they go, hey, we're going to give you 3 issues, you're going to do this. And it's very hit and miss because you're dealing with a lot of people that are either getting their first crack at Marvel, let's just say, maybe they've written other stuff, but they're getting their first crack, both as either an artist or a writer or both. So, you're not always dealing with the in my opinion, the best material.
Okay, interesting.
So from my opinion is, if you like She-Hulk or you like that character, you like this character, whatever character it is, and you want to see them beat up on some vampires, read that.
Yeah.
The Wolverine one was amazing.
Yeah.
Because it was a great Wolverine comic where he's fighting vampires.
He's killing a lot of vampires.
Did it have anything to do with the main storyline? No.
Not so ever.
So if you like that, read that. But to read all of it, no. And the other thing they don't do very well is if there is a series that is going to add a little bit more to the background or give you a little more depth, they don't really give you any indication.
No.
And I understand why. It's because then you're just going to buy that and you're not going to buy the rest of it.
Yeah.
So, for me, I left it. I poked at a few of them, on Marvel Unlimited. Because I was not going to buy 60 issues of comics and, with no idea whether I was going to like them or not.
Yeah. So traditionally speaking, I don't read the tie-ins, mainly because, like you said, it's usually most of them are very fluff and what's the point, right? This time, because I had Marvel Unlimited and I had a bunch of free time, I was like, sure, let's try this. I like the idea of vampires in, like, the sense of, like, we'll see how each character deals with them, and then, we'll see who turns into a vampire, who doesn't, and maybe some of them will matter. Man, let me tell you, almost none of them mattered. No. Like, it's funny to me that the one time I chose to read actually, I did read every single tie-in. The one time I read every single tie-in, like, maybe 10% of them actually matched to the storyline.
Well, and this is the thing that I never understand with their tie-ins. Like, they do the tie-ins, so they had, like, there was an Amazing Spider-Man, there was a Wolverine, there was a Midnight Suns, there was just, like, the list goes on and on and on and on. But then, in the main, like, Amazing Spider-Man run, there were 2 issues where it's Blood Hunt, right? Yeah. So what I hate about that is they just inject it into the middle of a storyline where all of a sudden it's like you're doing something with a character, and all of a sudden you got to break off and do 2 issues of him just pointlessly fighting and dealing with vampires, which just made no, like, it was a fluff. It was the same thing. I saw the same thing in Fantastic Four. There were 2 issues. There was 2 issues.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing. It was just like Mr. Fantastic trying to save them from vampires. Okay. But then, you did it in Avengers. The Avengers one was fun.
But it had nothing to do.
But it had nothing to do with it. But then in other comics, like Daredevil, there was no blood hunt.
No.
The Hulk, there was no blood hunt. Hulk had his own run.
Yeah, which is weird.
But so did Spider-Man. Spider-Man had his own run, and his own comic was dealing with the blood. Like, it's just too much. Like, and I hate when they do that, when they inject it into a run where it's not already fed into the story, and it's just suddenly they just got to pump the brakes and just go over and do these 2 issues for this mini series, and then come back to the story they were telling. It's just pointless.
The best example of doing it right that I can think of was King in Black Daredevil. It was King in Black happened while he was in prison.
Yeah.
And there was a very interesting tie into that of, like, he gets obviously symbioted, but then it has to do with, like, him dealing with, like, oh, I'm still dealing with my rage and stuff, but now I have a symbiote, making it worse. So how do I deal with that type of thing? Which I thought was an interesting tie.
No, there were two examples that came to mind when I was looking at it. Was like where it was done semi well. I would say the best one was probably House of M, because the whole world changed.
Yes.
So it was like, oh, how was my character that I'm, particular to, how did that affect them? That was good. The whole world changed.
Yeah. So it makes sense.
Made sense. Civil War was another one where it was there were a lot of really good ones, but there were also some really bad ones where it fed in. So it's like those were, I think, to me, as I looked back, that's where this started. Where there was like, we're just gonna feed it into everything.
Yeah.
But the build up in Civil War was coming and coming and coming and coming, and then it just the top blew off.
Yeah, the climax.
M, you didn't need that. In House of M, you didn't need that because Wanda just went, I'm changing things. So, yeah, we're just changing things.
And it's very interesting you mentioned both those series, because both those series are in our top tier of crossover events. So it's very interesting to, like, hey, this is how you do it properly, and obviously they need to learn that. But before we get into, like, that, so we did the first issue, off of the bang. You're now in the middle of the event.
Yeah.
Like, what were some pros and cons for you middle of the event? What do you think of it?
Cons, I would say, like, you get right into the second issue, and not even the full Avengers team crosses paths with the Blood Covenant again and beats the hell out of the Blood Covenant. And I'm like, but just last issue they handed it to him. So like I didn't that didn't sit very well with me. I was just like, okay, you don't even have your full team.
Yeah.
And now you're beating them up? Like that didn't make sense. I really felt like the first issue kind of just came in, hit home, set the stage. The next 3 issues were filler for the most part. Yeah. There were some good moments, like Miles getting turned into a vampire.
Yeah,
and when he first attacks them, and then they had to like calm him down. Like that was cool. When they had Moon Knight return, that was also like army of dead Moon Knight guys with him. That was cool. Like there were some cool moments, but for the most part, I felt like the middle part was like really telling you why this was important and setting the story and the stage up for the 5th issue where everything kind of ended.
Yeah, I have very similar opinions on that. It definitely felt like the main Blood Hunt issues like suddenly just lost all steam. Like you said, like from going from issue 1 where so much stuff happens and it's crazy, issue 2 not a lot happens other than they all end up at the Sanctum Sanctorum, go, oh shit, Doctor Strange is a vampire, whoopsie, and then that
Spider-Man's a vampire,
Spider-Man's a vampire, whoopsie, Black Panther's a vampire, all the black characters are vampires plus Doctor Strange, type of thing. Exactly. So it kind of like it was really weird pacing, and like I said, there were some. I did read all the tie-ins again. Most of them, the first couple issues were very like, oh shit, everybody's a vampire, what's happening? And then it's again slowly like over time, you're like, okay, it's just the same thing over and over again. We're fighting vampires, and either you win or you lose. And a lot of people die, type of thing. I think some of the like highlight ones, I actually did enjoy the Spider-Man. Actually, no, I didn't enjoy it, but like. The Spider-Man tie-in with Peter Parker had the interesting caveat at first of, oh wait, shit, we could technically cure the vampires if we do it right, / a lot of these people didn't choose to be vampires. So you had that moral dilemma. Yeah. But then like he also kind of was like, whatever. And then like every other book that kind of had that same moral dilemma of like, do we save them? Also was like, fuck it, who cares? Let's kill them anyways.
It was like, oh my god, the vampires attacked. People are getting turned into vampires. Yeah. What do we do to save them? Do you know it's really fun to kill vampires?
It's really fun to kill vampires.
And that's what it really boiled down to.
Like one of the worst ones, I think it was called Blood Hunt. Or Blood Hunters or something like that. Blood Hunters. But like it was this weird like anthology series. Yeah. But then it had this sub-story with Dagger where it could prove Dagger could cure vampirism. She cures Yelena Belova. Yeah. But they literally are in the same spot their entire 3-issue run. They don't move from the one block they're standing in where they're just chatting. Yeah. And like a random vampire will come up, they'll either kill them or cure them, and then it just happens again. Yes. It's like, what's happening here?
No,
like,
and that's what I mean with the hit and miss. Yeah. And then like I think a lot of the times with those little tie-ins, it's like the person doesn't like they don't know what to do with it. So it's just like, I gotta write this thing where it happens with this going on, but what is the
implication?
Like really what, like it's really all it is the character they gave me fighting vampires.
Yeah.
There's no plot here. It's just that.
Yeah, the one that cracked me up the most too, not was Venom, because you had Venom. I can't remember his son's name. Dylan Brock, and he's with Anti-Venom or whatever toxin. But he goes like, "Oh man, is this King in Black again?" And literally, like him and the other Venom kids are just like, "I'm pretty sure this is King in Black because this is very similar to King in Black," which I thought was really funny. Because like, do you guys really want to
take a shot at themselves?
Yeah, like, do you guys really want to point that out? That this is very similar to an event that happened like 5 years ago.
Well,
like,
and that's the thing is like it's like usually like again. When you're leading into that this kind of a series, it's like the build up and the understanding of what you're getting in is at least the foundation is there. I felt this was just like it hit, and then they spent 3 issues kind of telling you why you should care.
Yeah,
sprinkled with there were some good moments, but it was like, oh, here's this character named Very. No, I'm like, who is that?
A vampire character they introduced in the 70s. Yes. You know, they got to bring him back or whatever. And it's like, okay.
So it was just like stuff like that was going on, and then it's all of a sudden, and then we summon the Tower of the First Blasphemy or whatever, and it's just like what the hell is this?
And also that would have decimated New York, having this like fall from the sky. Like, how is that not a big of a deal? So the other 2 things I wanted to mention was one. I thought the idea, like, the vampire idea was very cool, but in my mind, I was like, this could have just been zombies. Like, I feel like they didn't.
Very much so.
I feel like they were very loose on the rules around vampires, so it's like you could have just had, like, again, King in Black symbiotes, or you could have been zombies again. Like, I felt like they could have done more with the vampire aspect, and that's why I love Blood Coven, because the Blood Covens were very much like, holy shit, those are fucking sweet vampires, you know, type of thing. Whereas every other vampire book was very much like, oh, it's just a generic vampire type of thing, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer vampire type of thing. It's like, okay, and so like that was one of my what are your thoughts on that? Like, did you feel that at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. It just like it's again. I felt like the like after the initial shock of the first issue, I was just kind of like, like okay, you're educating me. There's vampires. Some of them you care about, some of them you obviously don't because it's fun to kill vampires. Yeah. And it just didn't.
There was no consistency.
Yeah, there was no consistency.
The other thing I really want to point out was like, man, it was so obvious Blade was possessed. Like, did anybody actually think that was Blade who just suddenly turned evil? Like, did anybody think that?
No, like I knew something was wrong with him. Yeah. And I think when he was driving the truck and he's like, teleport me up, and then I was like, oh, okay, Blade knows something.
Yeah.
And then when the truck shows up and it's just the vampires jumping, I was like, okay, what the hell is Blade doing? Mm-hmm. Like something's up with Blade, and it was like, obviously it's not just he just decided, you know what, it'd be fun just to kill everybody.
Yeah.
You know, like obviously something was wrong with him. So like I know that was the attempt to your point to. Oh, look, he's Blade surprise! Yeah. It's like,
well, like, what annoys me is even the characters were like, why would Blade do this? It's like, guys, you've all been possessed at one point. Like,
he was just on the Avengers team.
Yeah, like, what are you talking about? Like, even his daughter was like, I guess I gotta kill my dad. It's like, he's obviously possessed. Like, what are you talking about? I think what would have been really interesting, because obviously one of the big MacGuffins of the story was that Doctor Strange could do a spell that would kill every single vampire.
Yes.
And I thought it would have been way more interesting if they had done instead of there's an evil vampire that did the whole Dark Force thing, but then Blade would know that Doctor Strange has that option, is trying to convince Doctor Strange, no, don't do it, you'll kill me as well, then chooses to turn Doctor Strange to be like, see, you're a vampire, you shouldn't kill yourself. And then not have Blade be evil, but have Blade like kind of do that moral gray thing of like, no, some of these people are good, like we shouldn't kill them all. But instead he was just possessed and evil, and it's just like, okay, and like I feel like there's way more they could have done with it. But,
no, it just I think again it was like there were some little hits here and there that were kind of like cool, but most of it was just like was the backstory of like why you should care about this and what's going on.
Yeah.
And then the 4th issue just before the climax in the 5th. You see them go like, whose help we need? Dr. Doom.
Dr. Doom.
And then it was just like, oh, this is not going to go well.
No, for sure. So, do you have any other thoughts about like okay? So let's get into the
final
one.
That's where it ended.
Yeah.
So
so let's get into the final thing. So obviously one of the big like yay or nays of a crossover event is how will this impact the universe going forward for the next year, right? And so you had the series end, like you said. Doctor Strange gives up the Sorcerer Supreme to Doom, who then is able to kind of cleanse the Dark Force.
Yeah.
but then the other ones are able to Bloodline and Miles Morales are able to punch Varney out of Blade, save Blade, but also because Dracula helped, technically all vampires can live in the sun now, I guess was technically one of the things.
Yeah, so that was some of the stuff like you know, when I got to the end of it, I was like, I just kind of started evaluating some of the things that happened, and was like, Moon Knight's back.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah. Khonshu's back, which was locked up.
However, you just killed him 6 weeks ago. Like, you didn't even wait a year.
Yeah.
Like, you just literally killed it. You just put him in the ground, and the body's still warm, and now you're bringing him back. And I was like, again, execution of that was, to me, was like, that was just too soon.
So the one defense I'll give that is if you actually read the Moon Knight comics, it's actually, there's a plot point. Yeah. So it's a plot point in the book that Moon Knight can always come back, but because Khonshu was captured by Asgardians, he couldn't. Yeah. So that was actually like built into the story of like he's technically supposed to resurrect, but he couldn't.
That was the other part is like, no offense to Moon Knight, and Jed MacKay apparently has done a very good job, but he's a B-lister superhero. Not a lot of people read him, so it's like the crux of your entire story is in a comic nobody's technically reading. So then you get to it and you're like, why is this such important. A big deal? So it's just like, I felt like the time was like, you didn't give any time for, I think if they would have stretched it out just a little bit, even half a year.
Yeah.
To give it a little more impact, to have Moon Knight come back. Plus, I like the Fist of Khonshu. He was what's his name, Moon Hunter, or
Hunter's Moon.
Hunter's Moon.
Yeah.
He seemed pretty cool.
He's awesome.
So you know, there was that. Then I was like, okay, the Doom thing. Yeah. Okay, you give him the Supreme. I knew he was going to screw everybody over.
Yeah, because
you knew it from the beginning, because he's Doom.
Yeah.
And he does it in a way. I thought it was kind of like it kind of landed flat. I was happy it happened because it's like, oh, this is going to set up some really cool stuff going forward. But it was just kind of a clumsy way to get it to him.
Yeah, a little bit, right?
Right. So I was kind of like, okay, there's that. Then you've got, to your point, the vampires. Now I can just walk around in the day, and I'm like,
okay,
there were a lot of vampires.
Yeah.
So now there's just a bunch of vampires walking around in the day. And the way they presented it to me was like, you know, Dracula was just like, oh, we're out in the sun. Yeah, you still drink blood and kill people.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So now you can do it 24/7?
Exactly. Like, it almost made a bigger problem.
Yes.
Like, that's why they had to dark the world. It was so that they could do this, and then like, oh, guess what? We can all do it anyways now. Yeah. Like, it's like, what are you guys talking about?
You know, Miles Morales now being a vampire, I was just like, this is just, I mean, you went from, like, I like the character. Okay, initially when he first came out, I did not like the character. I know. Okay, but I grew to like Miles Morales until he started wielding a sword, which just
makes no sense.
I just think is so dumb. Like, how's that even got anything to do with being a spider, or getting your powers from a spider? And then now he's a vampire. Mm-hmm. I was expecting like, oh, we resolve, and like I was expecting more heroes to turn.
Yes.
And then at the end, when everything's resolved, they become unvamped.
Yes.
He's a vampire now.
Well, that exactly, right? Like, I 100% agreed with you. I thought both Miles Morales and Black Panther would turn back to regular, but I guess now they're just vampires, and I guess we'll see what happens.
Well,
I guess because
Black Panther isn't, because he has the
heart.
The heart-shaped herb cured him.
And I guess Doctor Strange isn't either, so it's literally just Miles Morales.
Yes.
He's the only one.
He's the only one.
That's so stupid.
We need somebody to stay a vampire.
But like, again,
why not make it?
And again, he already had
Spider Vamp.
Yeah, it makes no freaking sense. And like you said, I'm very excited to see what they do with Doom if they did it. But it's very funny because they actually imply, I think it was Doctor Strange that says it to him, like, oh, did you even just orchestrate this whole thing so you could become Sorcerer Supreme?
Yes.
Which is very reminiscent of a little crossover event called Ultimatum.
Yes.
Where it was revealed Doctor Doom technically caused Magneto to go crazy and kill the entire, or half the world or whatever. Which I thought was really funny because everybody hates Ultimatum. Yeah. But they would steal that plot point from Ultimatum.
But they didn't kill anybody permanently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So what's the point, right? So to be fair, like before we said our pros and cons, I said I was a little bit more positive on it. I think my positives that came out of it, legit, one of the biggest ones is just Pepe Larraz's artwork.
Yeah.
I said the same thing when we did our big crossover event ranking. That's the reason why, for me, Secret Empire was so high. It was because the artwork was so good. And I think the same thing with this. I think the artwork is really good. I think the concept and the idea and the first half of it was really fun, of just like, holy shit, what's happening, vampires. It's crazy. And then, like we said, like there's just some cons that's like, man, if you just tweak this a little bit, I think you have just a fun, like maybe it won't be like as big changing as House of M or Civil War, but at least it would have been a super fun event that just would have been like, pow, what a great time, had a great time. And maybe like, and now you have Doctor Doom as a Sorcerer Supreme, right? But I think like, yeah, that's why I'm a little bit more positive on it. Why are you a little bit more negative?
I think it starts with the fact that the way they chose to bring it up again, like you're going into it, and I'm gonna say the vast majority of your general readers didn't know what the hell was going on. So like you have an event that's supposed to be the big summer event, and nobody knows why.
Yeah,
that was a big thing. You just came off the heels of Fall of X. It literally happens. They're like, oh, we won. We've taken care of what the hell's going on with the world. Like it literally takes. So it was just like you're leaping off of one thing to another. It was like I had exhaustion going into it. So then you get into that. The number of tie-ins, which I think is more of a like you didn't need them.
No, you never.
So you don't need to read them, but it's just it's the pure money grab that just offends me, that I look at it and I go like, this is just an attempt to produce more stuff that you have to buy. Instead of them putting the time and effort into making it maybe a 10-issue series instead of 5. I felt it was way too short for it felt like Siege.
Yeah.
Like Siege was like quick. 4 issues. It was just like, boom, you're done. That's what I felt with this. It was over too quick. And the state that it left it in, I was just like, okay, now we ended, and now we're on to Venom War.
yeah.
Right?
The next thing.
The next thing. So it was just like, it just, the flow, like how it fit, I think it could have been a very good crossover between Moon Knight and Blade.
Yeah.
That maybe spilled over into a few other things, but the scope of it, like Jed MacKay, I think was just like, I've got it, like it's an event, so I got to make it like this huge world-spanning thing.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you dragged a bunch of people in that just made it pointless, because it's just like, oh, I guess there's vampires, and I'm gonna punch some for a while for 2 issues, and then the vampires are gone.
Well, like you said, like I mean, even the Avengers, like normally the Avengers are so key to almost every single crossover event, but there's 2 Avengers team. There's the one that was in the Blood Hunt that just beat up the Blood Coven.
Yeah.
But then you also had the random team with Captain America who was just fighting Blood Baron, everything, Baron Blood. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, okay, like this is.
By the way, they were Nazi vampires.
Which
so not just vampires.
No, it was different. Yeah,
they were different. So just, I think it was a combination of just like the overload of everything, and then I felt like I was invested with the Blood Coven, they're cool, and okay, who's this variant? If this is actually not about that, this is about setting up Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
Right? To be for the next miniseries that you run, which is coming out in November or December.
Wow. I thought what was going to happen. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was coming out in November. I thought it was just going to be like the next year.
No.
It like kind of like what after Secret Invasion they had Dark Age or whatever it's called, which was really cool because it was like an entire year.
The after effect.
Yeah, exactly. That then build into Siege and you had to culminate in Siege. No, I thought
a year's too long, Greg.
A year's too long. So that then kind of leads us into our conversation about what's the point of crossover events. Should Marvel continue doing them? If they are going to continue them, how do we fix it? So what are your thoughts on this? You want to talk about this a lot.
Yeah, like I mean, I guess there's a little bit of a separation between like a miniseries and a crossover, and I feel like the miniseries has kind of gone bye-bye to an extent, and all the miniseries have now converted into these crossover events, because then we can cross it over into everything, and then we can produce more comics, which has just gotten which is, I feel like, degraded the quality of what we're now getting.
Yeah.
And now they're just bludgeoning us with them just over and over. Like it used to be like one would come up like once every like few years.
Yeah.
And then it was like once a year. Okay, I can handle that. Like, there's this big storyline, you're tying it in well, and it makes sense. And now all of a sudden it's like, no, we're going to hit you with like, just before Fall of X was Gods.
Yep.
Which I still don't understand what the hell happened to that one. I'm still trying to figure that one out. If anybody can explain in the comments what happened in Gods, that'd be great. So then you had Gods, and like it's just, then we moved into this one. Then we're moving into Venom War. Then we're moving into the Doom one. I can't remember the name of it right now, but they've already announced it. Like it's just, now it's like, not only were you bludgeoning us with them, now we have to read this one to understand what's going on in the next one.
Yeah.
Like it's just like Marvel, and probably even DC to some extent, just cool it. Like, we need a break. And if you're going to do those kinds of things where there are tie-in issues, like they did with Secret Invasion, okay, you want Amazing Spider-Man to deal with, Secret Invasion, write a little mini-series for him, 3 issues, 4 issues, whatever, do that separate. Leave it out of his main title, because that's my biggest pet peeve, is these things are getting injected so much that it just breaks up the flow of every other comic that's going on, especially when it's such a world-spanning event, because you can't ignore it.
No.
So all of a sudden I have 2 issues of Spider-Man dealing with a thug whose boss got turned into a vampire. Oh, but he's a vampire. And at the end I saved them both. It was like just a complete waste of time. And then by the time he come back, it was like, what was he doing before that?
Yeah, it really breaks the flow.
Like, it's just stupid.
Like, what I don't get is that, like you said earlier, it feels like a money grab in the sense of, like, they have to cross, theoretically fans are going to buy every single issue or whatever, but you and I are very much diehard fans, like, we read comics fairly consistently. Again, we're not buying every single issue, and I don't think we have in a very long time. So how's it still a money grab? Like, how have they, like, what are the sales numbers on this?
The sales numbers are awful.
Okay, exactly.
Like if you look at it, the sales numbers are awful. But it's like it's like they've taken the method of going like, okay, well, the sales are. Do you know what we need to do this? We need more. Right? It's like
Double down.
It's like they just keep doubling down on it, and it's like I don't understand how producing these miniseries that don't have anything to do with it, aren't quality, aren't good. Like, I understand it's a great avenue to give a new artist or a writer an opportunity to do something.
Yeah.
But couldn't you be a little more selective instead of just saying like, hey, we're going to have 50 tie-ins and just find any stray writer walking around that wants to write a comic to write it? Like, it's just not, it doesn't help the industry.
Well, I wonder if, like, especially in the recent years, the reason why they keep doing them, even if they're losing money on the comic book sales, theoretically, is they're just trying to see what ideas would work for the movies, maybe?
Possibly.
Because, again, if you look at Blood Hunt, the main characters were Moon Knight, Blade, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, like, all these characters that you can tell they're trying to push for the MCU, at least the new stuff.
And it's no mistake that at the end of this one,
Doctor
Doom, who did they just announce is playing him in the summer? Like it's all related and tied in.
Yeah.
I just wish they would do a tidier job of doing that.
Well, like you said, like, I just don't, like, even if that was their thought process of whatever, they're never going to do this scale on a movie. Like, even look at Civil War, the movie. Like, it was a quarter the size of what...
joke
100%,
compared to
right?
what Civil
So, like,
War
I just don't
was.
understand what their thought process is. Like, again, it's just one of those things. Like,
I don't
give
know.
it a
Like,
break.
I look back to the original Secret Wars.
Yep.
Selected heroes got pulled away. There was one miniseries, which was the Secret Wars, 12 issues. And during that time, there were 2 issues in each of the comics that were just dealing with, which was great because it was a flow. It was like, we just plucked your hero out of your comic.
Yeah.
So what are the people around them? Like, especially with a character like, say, Spider-Man, where he's got, a cast of characters that around him are all going like, where's Peter?
Yep.
Where is he? Where's Spider-Man? Like, what's going on? I don't know why people didn't put 2 and 2 together, but whatever. But at the end of the day, it was like 2 issues of just like, the world's still going on. The villains are going, nobody's stopping me? Great. And then they injected them back in after 2 issues. But you weren't having to buy anything else. It was just like, hey, the run that I've got, okay, this makes sense. If they were just suddenly plucked.
Yeah, what would you do?
And it was for 2 issues, and that was it. And I had 1 mini-series to find out what was going on with that character.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think it's funny, too, because it's like, it's not like the crossover events are just inherently bad. Like, crossover events can be super fun.
Super awesome.
And especially if you have either just a cool concept that's just a good time, or something that will actively shatter the universe, and you have to, like again, Civil War, and, like, the good ones, Civil War, like, House of M, the ones that actively change the Marvel Universe, do that, but don't force one every quarter. Like, that's insane.
Like, if you look at for instance, if you look at the X-Men ones, the X-Men crossovers where it's like the crossovers happening between like X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, it's some big event that's going Messiah, whatever it is. Like, if you look at it from a scale of like what happens, I'm pretty sure everybody noticed. But for whatever reason, you didn't have a Spider-Man Messiah War. You didn't have a, Captain America. Like, they just left it out. There's no reason, and that's why I can't, outside of the money grab, why they couldn't have just left it as like a
Blade Moon
Knight crossover with a little bit of it affecting the comics around them.
Yeah.
Instead of making it this is a big event.
Yeah.
And I'm used to big events. Like when they say big events, it's like minimum 8 issues.
Yeah, exactly. This was 5. And I feel like they could have probably condensed it to 4. Like it was pretty quick and whatever. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious to see what they do. I don't know.
And they just had they used to, in my opinion, they used to have a, like, if it was going to be that big, overarching, huge, all the Marvel guys, like Secret Wars, everybody's involved. It's a big change. Like, everybody comes out and it's all flowing in the same direction as far as, like, now we're going in a new direction. Whereas I feel like this one's just like, yeah, we got vampires now.
Yeah. Check it out. Pointy teeth.
Doom's, the Sorcerer Supreme, that's not good.
Yeah, exactly.
But we'll wait for the next miniseries to deal with that.
Man, again, a whole year of Doom as Sorcerer Supreme would have been so cool, but whatever.
But I just feel like if they want these things, they should be like, if they want these kinds of things to happen, and I think it's going like, this is really the format where I see comics changing more and more, is very much like what DC's, we were talking about the Black Label stuff.
Yep.
Is like, you get a great writer, you get a great artist, and you get them to write a story about that character. It's not tied into anything.
Nope.
It's not impacting anything. It might get called up in an issue at some point down the road, but it's completely separated all by itself, and they're amazing. Like, they're so good. So why I don't understand why Marvel hasn't picked up on that yet. Number one, and said, like, why don't we kind of do the same thing?
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, I just see, like, whereas before there was like a deeper story, like through 12 months of comic writing, and this isn't the case with all of them, but you get a deeper story, a longer drawn out story that was happening all year and then would culminate with something happening.
Yeah.
Whereas now it feels like they just I want to write a 6-issue story, and then there's going to be like 4 filler issues that are just crap.
Yeah.
Where we have a different writer and a different artist come in, and then we'll bring the other guys back and we'll do another 6 issues. And it's just like, okay, guys, like, just like, if you want to do that, then just pay them to do a short story, and then you can sell them as individual issues for idiots like me, and then you can bundle it up in a graphic novel for everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
No, yeah, it's a good point. It's interesting because, like you said, Marvel really doesn't do that. DC does, but it's funny because DC does do their still serialized, daily thing. But I feel like
it doesn't sell.
It doesn't sell, right? So it's very interesting that,
but I guarantee you, if you looked at the graphic novel or mini series stuff for DC, it probably sells fairly well. I mean, I've bought some of it, and I'm not a huge DC fan.
Yeah.
But I've bought it because it's good. Yeah. It's really well done.
100%. Well, any final thoughts on Blood Hunt / miniseries or crossover events in general? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, the final thought was, I mean, Blood Hunt, great art, fun time if you just want to see some vampires and blood and all kinds of crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
Give it a read, but it's not gonna change your life in any way, shape, or form.
I've read worse.
Yeah. Oh, yes, by far. And I think just on miniseries and stuff, it's just like, I wish they would just pump the brakes, because it feels like miniseries have now become another series.
100%, right? So we'll see how it goes. But no, if you agreed or disagreed, let us know in the comments. Make sure to follow us wherever you found us. We're on YouTube, we're on podcast platforms. Make sure to follow us. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
See you later.